Hey everybody, it's your boy Densuo, aka the King of Salts, and I'm going to be making a review for the Gundam Tristan, which just recently dropped, as it's basically derived from the Gundam Alex, and me, being a big Alex fanboy, I had to get it, and fortunately I was able to pull it. It's available in level 1 and level 2. It is capable of going both in ground and space missions, and it does have compatibility for space. It is a 600 cost at level 1, 650 at level 2. As you can see the slots, it comes in a 22, 15, 7, and 24, 16, and 8 for the level 2. The Not a lot of slots for long range, but it kind of makes up for it. We'll get to that in a bit. It has melee priority level 2, which isn't half bad. Sortie time or respawn time is irrelevant because that's based on cost. It is a 3-star suit, so it's a rare suit. General. I was actually thinking when I looked at the previews that it was going to be a raid, but no, it's a general. Now, looking at its HP, at level 1, it is about average to below average. No, it's about average to, it's about average for HP. At the level 2, though, it's below average compared to other suits in its cost. And you can see here. 600 has 1600 HP, but then if you look around at other suits, it's around the same range, except for the Zeong. The Zeong's got a bunch of HP because it needs it. The same with the Ashamar and the Drazen because they're big boys. El Goog level 5 is a level 5 suit, so it's going to be a little beefy. Same thing with the Grandpa Gundam. But these are specifically within the same same job, or same class, generals. But if we go to 650, you can tell it's a little on the lacking side. The only one that's about the same HP as it is the GP01 level 3, and even then it still comes up short on defenses for melee and beam resistance, but it does win out in melee resistance at least. For defenses, like I just mentioned, its ballistic and beam resistance are little on the low side. Good melee resistance though. It'll be really easy to max it out to hit the cap of 50. For movement speed, it's pretty good. High speed movement or boost speed is actually very good. Thruster gauge is alright. Turning speed is good. Now, let's make a comparison again though, just to play it safe. Let's go back to the 600 range. Looks like it's about average. Comparing its job, it's about average. Turn speed is very good from what it looks like. Yeah, turn speed is actually very good. Hold on a second. Yeah, looking at its equal cost at level 1, it is best in class for turn speed, which is great. Looking at the level 2, it is also, well, with the exception of these two, which I have no idea what these two suits are, it is best in class. So this is going to be a very, very agile suit in terms of that. For high speed movement, looks like it's not really that big of a deal. It's gonna get around. Anything that's above 200 for boost speed is good. So we don't even have to worry about that. For thruster gauge, it's not half bad. It's alright. But even then, don't forget in space, which is where it has compatibility, space does give you more value for thrust, so that's fine. So all in all, when it comes with stats, with the exception of its defenses, let's check one more time comparing to class. Yeah, it's definitely lacking when it comes to defenses. With the exception of the Ashamar. Yeah, when it comes to defense, the Tristan is actually worse in class at the 600 cost. And for the 650 cost, look, with the exception of melee, it's worse in class. So I'm gonna have to take that into consideration. So that covers that as far as its base stats. Let's go ahead and talk about its skills and its weapons, because that's where it's going to get interesting. So we're going to go ahead and get started with its weapons first. Comes with its unique beam rifle. It does have the level 1 and level 2. Has its own unique beam sabers. It has the arm gatlings, just like the Alex. It has a head-mounted Vulcan modified. Unfortunately, it's not a gun pod like the Gundam Mk.II or the top tier ones like the GP0 units. It does have this. It's listed as a club, but it's just a Sternfaust. Really, it's just a Sternfaust. Its shield's pretty good though. It's very good coverage. So we're gonna cover the weapons in a second, but you wanted to just show the basics on that. Let's go ahead and look at its weapons, because the weapons is where it's going to be very interesting. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about the beam weapon first. So the beam weapon that it has is high power. The level 1 is actually within the top 10 of current weapons in the game at 2600 power. Heat rate is 80%, but we'll get to that in a moment. It has great range at 400. Only 3 seconds for cooldown, so you can fire 2 shots quickly if you need to. Has 400 meters range, like I mentioned before. It does have a bit of a punishing time of 14 seconds for overheat, and it takes 4 seconds to charge up, just like the description says. It does, with those 2 shots that you'll fire, it's not going to stagger them. A charged shot will stagger, however. Now, what is its competitors when it comes to the top 10? You have the long rifle from the Super Gundam, which is a support. You have the GP02's beam bazooka, which is from a raid. You have the Hyakushiki beam rifle, the beam bazooka level 5, which would go into Peasant Douage, the Tristan's beam rifle again at level 2, the GP02's beam bazooka level 3, and then the 3 early prototype rifles. So, you know, all of the, what's the difference? These 3 weapons are unwieldy. You're almost never going to see anybody run these weapons, especially on the suit that uses it, because the only things it has afterwards is what, head Vulcans and I think a grenade. So these are really unwieldy weapons and have a very long cooldown time. The beam bazooka is very good, but this is on a raid. The Hyakushiki beam rifle is not half bad, but this also is being used on 2 raids, and I believe the other one that's listed there, I think that's a general, I'm not sure. The beam bazooka on the Peasant Douage is not a bad weapon. However, you're not really going to see that many level 5 Peasant Douages. By that cost, it should be outclassed. Then you have the long rifle, which is a stationary weapon. So this weapon, for what it is, it's a very powerful weapon, and it's on an agile suit. That's something a lot of these other weapons, or excuse me, it's on a general. So that's something a lot of these other suits can't really, you know, compare to. It's a lot of damage for what it is. 2.6k on that much range. It outranges everything, with the exception of the Super Gundam's long rifle. And then the level 2 Tristan beam rifle is top 5 in the game right now. So that's nothing to scoff at. For melee, let's see where it ranks. Level 2 is within the top 4, 8, 12, number 13 on the list. And the level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's within the top 24, top 25. So it's very good damage. And again, this is on a general suit. It's not unwieldy or tricky to use like the Hyper Hammer or the Beam Javelin. It doesn't have a very uber lengthy animation like the double Heat Hawks. You know, it's comboable, unlike the large Heat Hawk, which the Shimatsu Nagasaku has. So it's, you know, again, you know, this is better though because this is instant knockdown, and then not only that, but then you also have to, you know, keep in mind that the large Heat Hawk does have a hard stagger, same with the hammer. But all in all, the Tristan's melee weapon's really good. So let's go back over to the suit, talk about its skills. For comparison in power, it's 2700 for the melee. Before we go into that, I finish about the weapons. The melee level 1 is 2700, level 2 is 2835. We'll go over its animations in a bit. Again, I want to mention it again with the beam rifle. The beam rifle is really good. Like I said, it has 400 range, so you don't even have to put yourself in danger if you don't want to. And the level 2 adds a bit more range and a 130 point jump in power, 3-second cooldown between shots. If you need to fire, if you're in a desperate situation, a 4-second charge time isn't bad. So the positive is that this weapon hits hard. The negative is it's not an insta-stun weapon, which a lot of other suits in that cost range are going to have. But if you've been playing this game long enough, then that's not really gonna hurt you. And I don't know. Personally, I feel like ones that have charge shots tend to be more accurate. Maybe it's just me. The head Vulcans are okay, decent ASL as usual. The arm Gatlings, these have a great rate of fire, don't have much of a spread, so you're going to land your shots with this. The one thing I did notice with this one, comparing it to the Alex, because it's a direct comparison, the Alex has a larger auto sight lock reticle, but honestly it's still big enough to where you're not going to have any problems landing it. The club, aka Sturmfaust, if you used a Sturmfaust before, you're not going to have any problems with it. It's decent range, good damage, bit of a lengthy cooldown. And then of course the shield, it's not as huge as other shields, but it's got it's perfectly fine coverage. It's a good shield. Lots of HP on it too. For the skills, let's go over the skills. Has leg shock absorber level 3. So whenever you land from a jump, it's 30% less load, 15% less after you do evasive maneuvers, and it also recovers 1% faster. Has quick boost level 3, so you can jump 30% faster. This is for ground only. Leg shock absorber is also ground only. Dodge roll level 2, so if you do a dodge roll when you're at full boost, when your boost gauge is empty, then you'll be able to do a second one immediately if you need to. High performance balancer, so once you land from a jump or from a boost, aka evasive maneuver, you can cancel the recovery animation into a melee attack. You have high spec ambac, one of the best skills for space in the game, which is, again, if you're boosting in a certain direction, if you stop boosting but you keep holding the stick in that direction, you will continue to move normally and not go into the braking animation while you're in space. Melee combo controller level 1, so that lets you do a 2-hit combo. Forced injector level 2, so this is after you do an evasive maneuver, you can cancel it into high speed movement, so you can do it again. So if you boost one way, you can then boost another way immediately. This is great. So you can do that both in space and on the ground. This is extremely useful in space because you're going to have a lot more boost to play with. Flight control program, you can do more movements in air. So while you're in the air, like when you jump or something, then you can boost in a direction. So this is great because when you do that, you can, instead of doing a landing animation, you can just boost and keep it smoother or keep moving somewhere. This goes great with the quick boost because that'll let you jump up faster when you need to and get moving faster when you need to as well. It's pretty handy. And then glide structure, descends slower when you're in the air, makes it easier to perform mid-air actions. Self-explanatory. That's level 3. We should check the level 2. I should have done that earlier. Let's go to the level 2 real quick. As you can see here, the skills are pretty much the same. No difference. So nothing to worry about there. So if you like Alex, then you really shouldn't have any issues with the Tristan. It's essentially Alex but a bit faster. But I do believe in terms of defense or resistances, etc., I think it's a little bit weaker. Like you can see here, the Alex does have comparable HP considering its cost range. Below average in resistances and defense for ballistic and beam, but good melee resistance. However, the Alex has more natural range than melee strength, as opposed to the Tristan, which has more in melee than ranged. But that's also compared. But that's also to make up for. Oh, excuse me. That's also, I guess, of a balancing thing, because the beam rifle for the Alex doesn't hit that hard, but it can be fired repeatedly, compared to the Tristan, which hits harder. 131, 45, 50, but I believe it's the same thing actually. Let me check. Nah, this one does more damage. 200 meter range also, 11 reload. Yeah, it's got more range. So it's basically a beefed up version. The Gatlings have more range, which is great actually, and it still has its awesome fire. It also has its awesome rate of fire and good accuracy. So for the most part, this is a more melee centric Alex, but it also has a beam rifle that hits much harder. So yeah, with that in mind, let's go ahead and take it for a quick test run. Excuse me. Actually, let me see if we can. What's the highest cost we can go for this? 500? No, it'll have to do. Hopefully the devs add a higher cost for practice so we can get a little better accuracy in how hard we're going to be hitting things. But it'll have to do. Alright. So like I mentioned before, this suit's got a really good turn speed. Back movement speed seems to be pretty good. That coupled with its turn speed means you can keep your head on a swivel when it comes to that. Yeah, this turn speed is going to be really, really good. If you put a turn motor on this sucker, you're probably going to be even more of a beast with this thing. There's the force injector going to work, the glide control, etc. Now, like I mentioned before, if you shoot the beam rifle twice, you're not going to stagger. So you're just going to overheat, so keep that in mind. For the head Vulcans, the usual when it comes to the ASL, typical fire rate, typical reload. Beam rifle does charge up pretty fast. Normal stagger, pretty good damage too when it hits. Like I said, the ASL for the Gatling arm is a lot smaller than what the Alex has, but you really shouldn't have any issues landing it. And the excellent rate of fire, nothing to scoff at. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention that's an advantage of this is the following. A lot of suits in this game, when it comes to the higher cost, they tend to start focusing on beam weaponry, and you'll notice that some of those suits are going to end up having, like, they're going to be lacking in ballistic defense, so you can really take advantage of that with the Gatling gun, so keep that in mind. As far as the stern foss is concerned, it's the usual. You can just use it for the usual thing. Have it set up. You can use it in the meantime while you're waiting for your beam rifle to, you know, be ready to use without having to overheat it. And this thing is just a lot faster than Alex for the most part. It feels a lot faster, and the turn speed is just, oh my lord, man, this turn speed is good. Having this much turn speed is a godsend. It's something that I really became a fan of when I tried turning motor on GP01. Like, let me tell you, having a lot of turn speed is good because you can use that in the event that, let's say, for example, you knock down like a raid or a support or anybody for that matter that's not very good on turn speed. You're gonna be able to, just abuse them with it. So with that in mind, we got left is the beam saber animation. I don't have any really many suits that use twin sabers. So there's a neutral slash and a downswing. There's a side swing. One thing I already like is the normal swing. This one looks like a pretty easy one to not hit your teammates with, and it has decent range. Downswing is kind of a little on the slow side though. Okay, so I was checking to see if this had a similar downswing to the GP01, where it has a 2-hit downswing, where the initial swing is actually pretty fast, but it doesn't look like it. That's just actually preparing to swing. Doesn't go very far either from what it looks like. Okay, yeah, it doesn't really go that far, so keep that in mind. I'm just gonna say that the melee is kind of for show, but it can't hit multiple targets, so that's definitely a plus. But then again, that's the same for any other beam saber. I think the best part there is the fact that the neutral swing, it's very easy to not hit your teammates, so that's going to be important. Just check yourself on the downswing that you don't hit your teammates. Yeah, the range isn't very good on the downswing either. That's not good. For what it is, for how it looks like, it doesn't look like it has that good range. So you definitely want to be closer than you think. But that's fine because it does have decent dash speed, so it shouldn't be too much of a hassle to go ahead and do something like land a charge shot and step in. Yeah, you gotta be a little closer than that. But you can also use a Sternfaust for that, so that should be fine. Sternfaust cannot be fired while boosting. The only weapon that you have that's going to be able to fire while boosting is going to be the Vulcans. But that's perfectly fine. Good way to use it is to backdash, because like that your shield is going to be at a decent way to cover you. Speaking of which, let's check the other animations. Coverage isn't all that when you're crouching. How about prone? Looks about the usual for coverage, so no big deal. You should be able to retreat perfectly fine with the shield coverage with your head Vulcans, so that should be fine. So that should pretty much cover it for the Tristan. I don't think the suit's bad. If you like the Alex, then you're definitely gonna love this suit. It's literally Alex but faster. The only real difference is the Gatling gun has a smaller ASL, and the beam rifle is not spammable. You don't have access to the bazooka, but you're perfectly fine with the beam rifle, and then being able to switch between that and the Gatling gun. And then you also have a Sternfaust for if you need stun or a bazooka-like weapon. You have that, so you're perfectly fine. You shouldn't have any issue cycling weapons with this suit. Of course, as usual, practice the usual beam heat discipline. There's no reason for you to overheat with this weapon because, one, you have the weapon itself, you have the Sternfaust, you have the Gatling gun, and then if you really need to, you can just back off and discourage them with your Vulcans, which already reload fast enough as it is. I think the only thing that I'm going to say that's kind of disappointing about this suit is that the ASL on the Gatling gun is smaller, and that the defenses aren't really that good, but you can't have everything. So I also wanted to just illustrate it just to say that I'm not talking out of my rear end. Let me go ahead and put Alex here so you can see the difference in the Gatling gun arms, but I'm pretty positive that the rate of fire is the same though. Let me just check real quick to make sure I'm not crazy. Alright, let's check and make sure that I'm not crazy. Oh yeah, I'm right. Much bigger. And I don't use ASL because ASL is too expensive. But you can tell it's clearly larger, but it is ASL capable. So that really helps with the Alex to be more accurate. Same rate of fire though, so that's fine. And then of course the beam rifle was the other difference was that this one's a lot more spammable. And then if you land 3 shots, you're going to stagger them. You also have the charge shot, which charges, I believe, 1 second faster. Also staggers, etc., etc. But that's really it. The Vulcans are the same thing, the usual. So there you go. Those are the main differences for the Alex. As far as the Alex has the better Gatling gun, but like I said, if you know what you're doing in this game, you really shouldn't have any issues landing the Gatling gun. And even then, it's just the fast rate of fire is just really, really good. So you can't go wrong with it. So yeah, that covers the Gundam Tristan. I like it personally, but that's because I'm clearly biased because I'm an Alex fan. If you like the Alex, then I would definitely say go ahead and pull it. This is going to be one that hits a bit. The beam rifle stings a bit more. The melee, I'm not convinced on the double beam sabers, but then again, I don't really use double beam sabers that much, so I'm going to just say that, you know what, that's me being biased. I think the suit's good. Is it going to be meta defining? I'm going to say no, because in that cost, you still have to deal with the Kubale, which is just abusive on ground. I have no idea what the devs were thinking, putting the Kubale on ground, but I think it'll be perfectly fine in both on ground, and then of course it should definitely not do poorly in space because it is space compatible. It has great range on its beam rifle at 400. That's going to be something that's going to allow it to either be a buddy suit, and then if you had to, fight close, you have the Gatling gun, and its good mobility will allow you to reposition yourself with the Vulcans to be able to go ahead and, look up or down and boost away. And it's also got a good shield so you can cover yourself with it as well. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad suit. If you like it, or if you like Alex, highly recommend it. If you're going to pull for it, good luck. So that covers that. Hopefully this is useful to you. See you in the battlefield. 6 on.